Today we finally get to talk about the AFC, going into the AFC North in the basement. The Cleveland Browns, one of the worst teams in the NFL this year. We're going to talk about where I had them in August, what happened with their season, and what went wrong with it. And then we're going to conclude with talking about what they can do to get better. But before we begin officially, all right, and welcome in everybody. Hope you're having a fantastic, fantabulous, awesome freaking day. My name is Garrett Shumake, and you are listening to the Shumake Take. Welcome in to Predictions versus Reality. The offseason series continues as we reach its midway point. We're going to be talking about the Cleveland Browns, like I mentioned. If you know about Predictions versus Reality and the origin of it, what we're going to be doing here, you can go ahead and hit the timestamp down below. But if you don't, I made scheduled prediction videos back in August predicting where I thought each team would land. So we're just going to go back into the past, look at it, compare it to what happened actually in the regular season. And then once again, we'll talk about how they can get better. Before we begin, if you enjoy this content or if you enjoy the Shumake Take and would want to become a fan, hitting the like button and subscribe button would be a huge help for me. I would greatly appreciate it, and it would help me growing my channel and spreading my football passion to more and more people on this platform. But let's begin talking about the Cleveland Browns, going right into it here. Where did I have the Cleveland Browns in August? Well, looking back on it, this is kind of funny. I had them going 10-7. So I had the Browns going 10-7 because I thought this defense would continue to be a top unit in the league and kind of carry this offense again. And at the same time, I did expect this offense to at least somewhat improve now that they were finally healthy. If we remember 2023, the Cleveland Browns were the most injured team in the NFL, yet they still managed to win 10 games and make the playoffs. So there was a lot of interest in this team going into 2024. Some people thought that this team should be able to continue their continuity. Some people thought they would end up taking a step back. It was a very mixed perception of what the Browns would do. And having a little bias in there personally, I wanted to lean more on the Browns being successful again, because the Browns have not been able to continue to build consistent success since they've come back in the 2000s. They've been really, really bad, right? We all know this. So I was like, can we please just have another good year of the Browns? I think that would be good for them. I think it'd be good for the NFL. Kind of like the same reasoning with the New York Jets and why I had them really winning the AFC East. And I think I even had them winning a playoff game as well. So it's kind of similar bias in the sense of like, okay, a bad team, let's kind of root for them a little bit more to do well. I think they could, and ultimately they didn't. But that being said, I believe that Kevin Stefanski won Coach of the Year for a reason. He is a good coach, and despite all the injuries, they still brought him to the playoffs. They got blown out, of course, but I mean, come on. I mean, you're going up against the Houston Texans, who were striving at that point. They looked really good. I mean, even with the rookie quarterback and C.J. Stroud and rookie head coach D'Amico Ryans, the Texans were at home as well. It was a more favorable matchup there. But the fact that they made the playoffs was really cool. It was a successful year for the Browns in that sense. But all that being said of why I thought they would do well, that's not to say I wasn't a bit skeptical. I also talked about how this offense should improve, like I said, but at the same time, there was no true telling what it would actually look like. They did trade for Jerry Jeudy, which was an improvement, and looking back, it was a big move for them. At the same time, Nick Chubb was still injured and wasn't going to be ready for the season. There was just no telling how they were going to perform. I mentioned that they were in a wait-and-see mode, per se, because we just got to see what happens. We got to wait and see what happens. I expected them to improve, but there was really no telling what was going to happen. But all that being said, there was no way that they were going to somehow manage to screw it up really bad, right? Right? Well, they did. They found a way to literally screw up so bad that last year definitively was a fluke. It was just objectively a fluke in every sense. Somehow, some way, they managed to make it a fluke. So how did that happen? What happened with the Cleveland Browns season? So they did not finish 10-7. They finished 3-14, and the second worst team in the NFL. Wow. This is like one of the teams I was like the most wrong about. To go from projected to go 10-7 to finish 3-14, Jesus Christ. Like, a lot more had to go wrong than just a couple things not going the Browns' way. No, almost everything went wrong. But more specifically, what happened with their season, their offense, they finished 28th. Their defense finished 19th. And their three best wins, in my opinion, which their only three wins on the roster, were Jacksonville. They beat them 18-13. They beat Baltimore 29-24, which is one of their best wins, or I guess not one of their best wins, but probably their best win of the year. And then they beat Pittsburgh at home 24-19 as well. So you got a couple division wins in there. Yippee. And then your other win was against a 4-win football team. Congratulations. What a year the Cleveland Browns have had. But to kind of summarize what happened with their season, injuries were another issue. And so it kind of piled up on them. And Deshaun Watson, at this point, Deshaun Watson's a bust. It's not going to work. The offense just simply could not get going. They couldn't stay healthy. Quarterback was a revolving door. Running back, Nick Chubb, even when he came back, he wasn't that effective and then got hurt again at the end of the year. And then wide receiver was Amari Cooper ended up getting traded. He wasn't performing well. Elijah Moore, meh, he's set to be a free agent. Jerry Jeudy was a Pro Bowler and had 1,200 yards, and he had a 272-yard game against the Broncos about the third quarter through the year, in the third quarter of the year. So that was nice to see the Browns have something good at wide receiver. But outside of that, there really wasn't much of anything. So that was a problem. The defense was a little bit better, but this is one of those teams that was just really hampered down by a horrible offense. The defense could have been better, but the offense definitely was just the worst part of this unit. Injuries or not, you don't just have injuries and go 3-14. That's just not possible. A lot of things had to go wrong. So specifically, what went wrong with the Cleveland Browns? Well, I mentioned Deshaun Watson officially being a bust. It's over. Deshaun Watson, he's making too much money. He retore his Achilles. He's not going to be ready for the 2025 season. So, yeah, he's done. In my opinion, his career's over. No team's going to want to pick him up. No team's going to want him. He's done. And what a sad way to end Deshaun Watson's career. Just because the trade, at the time, people were very upset about it because of the contract that they gave him and with all the off the field stuff that he was going through. It just, a lot of people marked this trade as it was done. It was a bad deal before he even stepped foot and played a snap as a Brown. And looking 3 years later, yeah, it was one of the worst trades in NFL history. Absolutely terrible. And now the Browns are stuck with this quarterback, paying him so much money, and they're not even going to get anything out of him of serious significance. And the next thing, the offensive line took a big step backwards. Despite they got their 2 tackles back, they got Jack Conklin and Jedrick Wills back, but both of them ended up getting hurt again, so DeJuan Jones had to step in, and the backup left tackle, I can't remember what his name was, he had to step in, and they weren't good at all. The interior was okay, but the big thing was losing offensive line coach Bill Callahan. He had left to go Tennessee to coach under his son, Brian Callahan, and Bill Callahan's one of the best offensive line coaches in the NFL, if not all time. So losing that type of guy hurts, and the production in his absence was very much felt. The third thing, without Nick Chubb, and even when he was back, like I mentioned, the offense simply had no identity. With all the injuries and the lack of overall talent on that side of the ball, they just didn't look like anything. It was just Jerry Jeudy and occasionally David Njoku, and that was really it. Amari Cooper didn't do much. Elijah Moore didn't do much. Jerome Ford and Dearness Johnson and what's his name? Deontay Foreman, when they were all running around at running back with Nick Chubb being hurt, it was just nothing. And obviously the injuries to Deshaun Watson didn't help. Jameis Winston came in there and brought some juice about the halfway point through the year, but then he got hurt. And then so we saw Dorian Thompson-Robinson start. That was a terrible thing. And then Bailey Zappi started the final game of the year. And where that marked, he was the 40th starting quarterback to start for a starting game for the Browns since 1999 when they came back to the NFL, which that's one of the worst stats I think you can ever have as an organization. And so the fact that they managed to add on to it, typical Browns fashion. The next thing on the defensive side was the defense just fell off a cliff. The injuries did plague this unit, especially on the interior defensive line, which you could see why the run defense was kind of bad, or pretty bad for the Browns, which, okay, that checks out. And they also lost starters in the linebackers and DB rooms, and it led to a unit that was awful against the run, like I mentioned. They were awful in the red zone, one of the worst. And then in scoring, they were also one of the worst. So you add on the issues on offense and injuries on defense, and you got a team that's just simply not going to do very well. And 3-14 reflects that perfectly. And then finally, they really didn't do that much for this team to get better. Their free agency simply just was ineffective. And they did flesh out the roster with more depth players, right? But even then, when the starters got hurt, the depth players weren't enough to really at least just stay competitive. No, this team was not competitive at all. And another team that's on the bottom with the Cleveland Browns, the last thing that went wrong for them is their draft simply hasn't been good over the past 5 years. This draft didn't look all that very promising. So you're looking at now, these past couple of drafts, they haven't had first or second round picks because of the Deshaun Watson trade. And you look at and you see that the Browns have been able to draft premium talent because they haven't had those top picks. And that's set their franchise back with Deshaun Watson and his injury. Had Deshaun Watson actually at least somewhat looked like he did when he was in Houston, I don't think it would have been that bad. It's been this bad. But when you draft away all your capital and then you can't draft talent with what you pick, which on top of that you're not getting premium talent anyways, it's just not going to work out for you. And the Browns are an awful football team because of that. So with everything being said, what now? How can the Browns get better? Well, we're going to start with the big three needs. Number one is quarterback, obviously. And it's very rumored right now of really questioning what the Browns are going to do because they could draft Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders with the second overall pick. Some people are thinking they're going to draft Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter. There's really no idea who's going to pick who at the top of the draft for the most part, right? So the Browns, in my opinion, you got to go quarterback. You have to, whether it's Shedeur Sanders or Cameron Ward. I know that people, aren't as high on Shedeur Sanders anymore. After the combine, his draft stock is sliding. But man, they need one. They need a reset at that position. In my opinion, I would re-sign Jameis Winston and start him because he's been there. Keep some continuity with your team and with your players in the locker room. He's a great guy too, for their locker room, so it makes sense to keep Jameis. Despite the good and the bad, at least it makes your team interesting, which is important. And then you draft a quarterback second overall and let him sit and learn. I think that's the right move for the Browns to reset and really get this thing right and rebuild from the ground up and let that quarterback help set the foundation for your new team that you're going to have to be rebuilding here. The second one is edge rusher. Because Myles Garrett, is gone. He's going to be gone in Cleveland. I know GM Andrew Berry has said, we're not going to trade him. We have no plans to trade him. Talking to Andrew Berry right now, trade him. Don't be an idiot. Trade him. He wants to leave. Do right by the player. Trade him away. Get a bunch of picks so you can rebuild this roster. Right now, the team has so many issues on it that you might just have to trade away Myles Garrett and rebuild. I know that Myles Garrett's a guy you want to build around. He's a defensive player of the year, one of the best edge rushers, if not the best edge rusher in the NFL, but he clearly doesn't want to be here anymore. He no longer believes in the vision, and this team is realistically 2+ years away from being competitive again. So what's more important to you? An edge rusher that doesn't want to be here anymore, or gathering a bunch of draft picks to actually rebuild this thing and potentially do it right so you don't get fired? So I know he is the top guy in Cleveland, one of the best Cleveland Browns they've ever had, realistically speaking, but it's time to go in a new direction. Trade him. Use one of those picks that you get to draft an edge rusher. Maybe you can make a trade to go into the first round or get another first-round pick and get a guy like James Pierce, Mike Green at the end of the draft. Get a guy to help rebuild your offense and rebuild your defense and get two cornerstones there, kind of like what Houston did with C.J. Stroud and Will Anderson, where they drafted two of those guys in the first round. Both of them were in the top 5. You're not going to do that. But you get 2 first-round talents, one on offense, one on defense at premium positions to help rebuild both sides of the ball from the ground up and make it right. So that's what I would do with those 2 spots. And the next one's offensive tackle. Jack Conklin, I'm guessing he's going to be back. I think they might cut him. You have 4th-round pick DeJuan Jones. I think you keep and continue developing him. He's talented. But Jedrick Wills just has to be a free agent. I don't know if you bring him back. I don't think he's good enough for you to bring back. So drafting an offensive tackle is also important. Problem is, who are you going to sign at veteran? I guess Ronnie Stanley is a free agent. So if Baltimore doesn't bring him back, which I'm expecting them to do so, maybe you get that guy. There's a couple other ones that you could sign as a bridge tackle. And then I think in the second round, you draft one. If you can theoretically trade Deshaun Watson, trade Myles Garrett, and you're able to get multiple picks for him, maybe you trade into the first round and get Mike Green or get another edge rusher, or you have 2 second-round picks, right? You'll definitely have 2 of those. You use one on an edge and another on offensive tackle. So you could do that and just really try and fill up these premium positions and really begin rebuilding this foundation. But also, this team also has other holes. Offensive line, there's other holes that need fixing. Wide receiver, they need a running back. They need to draft on day 3. They need better production from that group. And on defense, it's hard to gauge what they need on the defensive line other than edge rusher. Defensive tackles got hurt. All 4 top guys on the depth chart got hurt at some point. So maybe you just let them all come back healthy and see what they do there. And then linebacker, you could use a linebacker. DB also needs a little bit of help, maybe at safety. So there's really a lot more needs than just these big 3. But I think if you can trade Myles Garrett, get those picks back and address these 3 positions first, I think that'd be a great way to reset the foundation that Cleveland's clearly broken and actually get this thing right maybe for the first time in 20 years. But to wrap it all up, just with the bad drafting, the bad Deshaun Watson trade, and also a lot of players on this team set to hit the free agency market. A lot of starters are. I've mentioned this I talked about this with the draft. It's time to hit the reset button and rebuild once again. The problem is the front office is just straight up garbage. And while Kevin Stefanski is a good coach, I fear that if there's not a significant improvement in 2025, which I don't expect, Kevin Stefanski is going to be fired, and you're going to be back at a revolving door at head coach. It's a similar situation to the Steelers and Mike Tomlin, because you have a good coach, but how much more can you take being bad before you fire that coach? And does that mean? And the problem is, I don't know if firing Kevin Stefanski will be a good or a bad move, because I think he's a good coach, but if he's bad again, I mean, it could justify it. But at the same time, he has brought the Browns. It's not a lot, but compared to how bad they've been, he has brought in comparatively a lot of success. He brought them to the playoffs in 2020, right? Just completely wrecked the Steelers. You look at last year and going to the playoffs despite all the injuries, and Kevin Stefanski won Coach of the Year. So it's a very tough situation for the Browns to be in. And then you look at Andrew Berry. I think Andrew Berry should have been fired. I just don't know with this guy anymore in the front office. It's just a mess. It's a bunch of mess with a bunch of question marks. And 2025 right now for the Browns already looks over before it's even going to get started. I hope that they can make some moves and get some improvement, because 3-14, you can't get much worse than that. And I think they will improve by like a game or 2. I mean, it's just really hard to finish 3-14 or worse again. But we'll just have to see. But that being said, the Browns definitely don't look like they're going anywhere fast. But if they do have a potential to make it right this time, I know I'm saying that a lot. And with the Browns, are they really going to do that? I don't know. I don't have a lot of faith in it. But there's an avenue for them to do this thing the right way and begin improving normally and get this rebuild right this time. But I just don't know if it's going to happen. And 2025, once again, is going to look like it's over before it's really getting started. But that is going to do it for me today with the Cleveland Browns, guys. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. If you have, please hit the like button and subscribe button. Really helps the channel out tremendously in helping me grow and spreading my football passion to more and more people on the platform. Also, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Where do you want the Browns to draft in with their first round pick and their second round pick? What do you think a trade for Myles Garrett would look like? What would the compensation look like? And also tell me, where do you think the Browns should go with quarterback? Because there is a big need there, and I have no idea what they're going to do to fill that need. So I want to hear all your thoughts, Browns fans, in those comments. Please get to me about all these topics. And then lastly, for everyone that's listening, share the video, guys. I would greatly appreciate that, whether it's by word of mouth or by social media. Getting everybody locked in and locked on to the Shumake podcast is important, because I come out with great content for you guys like this every single week. We're going to be continuing with the NFC North, or AFC North, excuse me, and then we'll talk about the AFC East. Then we'll finish with the AFC West, and then we'll conclude with the AFC South. But that being said, that's going to do it for me today, guys. Hope you guys have enjoyed, and I will see you all next time.